What are the things we together have done over the last 5 years? We've had a number of challenges. When I first got here, we were in the midst of COVID, and we moved in July, and I got to know everyone by their eyes. That was kind of interesting, but then I had to relearn people after their masks came off.
Welcome, everyone, to podcast number 251, Renew Your Mind. With us today, we have our Senior Pastor Paul Gruenberg, our Family and Youth Director, also Praise Band Leader, Jordan Kettlewell. We have Pastor Jeremy Touroo. We have retired pastor, kind of not retired anymore, though.
Getting less retired all the time.
Very sweet, and myself, Dana Hall, as the moderator. Today, we're going to start a series. We are so sad to say this, out loud, that Pastor Paul's last Sunday with us will be August the 10th. And just a lot of emotions, with his leaving. And what we wanted to do, this is Pastor Paul's suggestion, is each one of us podcasters here reflect over the last 5 years of the things that happened in our church, with our church family, that really had a major spiritual impact on us. Now I need the podcasters around the table to say, I want to go first.
So what I would say, Dana, is what are the things we together have done over the last 5 years? We've had a number of challenges. When I first got here, we were in the midst of COVID, and we moved in July, and I got to know everyone by their eyes initially. And as I got to know people by their eyes, and maybe some people who wore certain masks, that was kind of interesting. But then I had to relearn people after their masks came off.
That's metaphorical right there.
But didn't you listen to their voice too?
I did, but all of a sudden you're seeing a nose, you're seeing a jawline, teeth and lips, and if guys have mustaches or whatever, I mean, you could only imagine what they look like underneath the mask, and all of a sudden, you are, and then I would have to look at the eyes up. And hairdos and stuff like that.
I worked remote for, most of my career, or a lot of my career. And so it was all voice, with me, and I'd know their voice, but then when you meet them physically, whoa. But all right, what else happened over the last 5 years?
Well, I mean, when we look back at the COVID time, we had the outdoor services. I only recall just a handful at the most. Otherwise, it was there was a threat of rain or the dew on the grass, and we had the pews set up every other pew, and there were some families that filled up 2 pews in a row because they were family and it didn't matter anyway. It was an interesting time to navigate that. The people in the first service were masked, required, and the people in the second service were mask optional. We had people that were, why are you even having services? Sure. And there were people who were resistant to putting anything on their face. And I think we struck a chord, a middle ground that allowed people who needed to be masked a space in the first service where the sanctuary hadn't been used in 7 days, and so there wasn't any threat of a bug or anything.
And we wiped the pews down too.
Yes, Dana, you were doing a lot of that between services, and then the second service was people who were mask optional. Most didn't wear masks, and that allowed them the freedom then to worship, still with the distancing, which we find out later really didn't make a difference. So it was new for the country. It was new for the church. I think from that, and you guys will have to help me with this. In the church I came from, we didn't have videoing. And so I had a laptop, we had a Facebook account, and that's what we did for services. Then the church finally got a camera after I left, and so they became live stream, but we were already live streaming here.
Correct. Yeah.
But I think it was such a wonderful option for people to be able to connect with the church and be able to worship at some level, as some would say, with their coffee and jammies, and so it was an interesting time of transition for the whole country.
Yeah. That could not, I don't want to put you on the spot, Pastor Paul, but that could not have been, a transition's hard no matter what, but that had to make it extra challenging,
Oh, sure.
I would think.
It did.
It's almost like two transitions,
Yeah.
masked transition, and then when the masks came off, you had another transition to learn everybody, their face.
Right. And
But-
one of the challenges, so for the first two churches, when I got there, I had the secretary or the admin arrange for small groups that I would go and meet people,
Okay.
probably 2 or 3 before the first service, so that I would have a bunch of names already in my brain about who's there, and would do that for the first couple weeks to get to know people. And that was totally out the window.
Yeah. What else comes to everyone's mind, just timeline wise?
Well, I mean, there was so much transition that, I mean, outside of your transition into the church, there was so much that changed in that ensuing year and a half. Just in the church structure and all of staff. Jeremy came on as associate pastor. That's when I came into the worship team. There was just a lot of shifting and moving happening in the church at the time.
There was. And the challenge of that was, who's working, who's not. I understood that when COVID came, Pastor Dan would be in the office, and then Michelle would be, but nobody else on staff was allowed. And then as I got there, I had conversations with all of the staff, and we're figuring out how we can do church as meaningfully as possible. And with that, over the next, as Jordan said, over the next year and a half, there were a lot of transitions, and I don't know, I saw a lot of God in those transitions.
Oh, yeah.
When we think in terms of Jordan Chambers, the associate pastor, leaving, that spring, Jeremy Touroo comes to me and says, "Hey, can I talk to you about a call I've got on my life?" And Jeremy, you had talked with Dan prior to that.
Yeah, I had. I started hearing God's call clearly into ministry in the spring of 2020. So basically right when COVID started was when I really started hearing from God on that. I think he had kind of planted some seeds a few years earlier that I promptly ignored for the most part. But,
As you do.
But
Yeah.
but it came heavily kind of March 2020 timeframe when Pastor Dan was still serving here. And so I began my journey by sharing that with him.
Right.
And with Amy, and just kind of us praying and discerning. And then, of course, Pastor Dan moved to a different appointment in July of 2020 when you came to our church.
Correct.
And so that was still 2020, though. So I still was, for a while, I was still talking to Pastor Dan, Amy, and I. And then I kind of, at some point, I don't remember when it was. It might have been into 2021. I also shared that with our small group as a small group. Not to put in a plug for small groups, but that's a very positive space with people that know you and that you can trust with prayer and support and feedback.
And I'm guessing that they really affirmed you.
They did mostly
For the most part, except for that one person who said, no way.
They did, and they've been there for me through that very closely and prayerfully and helpfully with feedback. And then so there was quite a time frame of just kind of praying and very slowly listening for God. But then I knew once you had kind of settled in and had been with us that it was time to go talk to Pastor Paul about it as well. And I would say that was maybe, I don't know, that
It seemed like the spring
of 2021, maybe somewhere in that time frame. Yep.
So it
Seems
was
right.
in the spring that happened, and I think within about 3 weeks, Jordan Chambers and I had a conversation regarding his future.
Yeah.
And it was I'm just like in awe of God. You know, God is supplying the needs that we have, or the needs that will be coming up. And Jeremy was ready to step in pretty quickly. And I think a part of the transition for you that made it a little bit easier, not only had you been in children's ministry because you were going to step into the family and youth as a director of family and youth.
Yes.
Not only had you been helping out with the children, but you already had the relationships with other parents. You had that level of communication with them, and it was almost so seamless that you came in on part-time and were able to handle the workload with the youth and the kids. And then and we were able to send Jordan off. I think that was after masks. He left in August.
August 2021. So were we getting to the end of masks at that point?
Yeah, masks had become relaxed
Over that
early
summer.
June.
Yeah.
So by August, we were worshiping without masks. Some people still wore masks, which was important for them. And so you were able to step in, and that was one of those just very seamless moments for me that I saw God's hand in regarding the ministry of the church, that something wasn't just going to hit the floor because there wasn't anyone there, a vacuum of sorts. But the other aspect of that is Jordan.
Yeah.
And I remember Jordan Chambers and then Jeff Fitzgerald, who was playing electric guitar. I think Noah was on drums, sometimes Caleb. We're talking in terms of we need a bass player. Well, I know someone who plays bass. I think that was Jordan Kettlewell or Jordan Chambers saying that. And so we're talking about this guy named Jordan Kettlewell. And
Do you play bass?
Anybody who plays guitar can play bass. So I think it was probably
Okay.
Jeff, because Jordan and I knew each other a little bit, but
You knew Jeff better.
I'd known Jeff. Jeff helped me write my first song when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
We were neighbors.
Okay.
And so he and I have known each other for a long time. And that's probably what he was thinking. Well, Jordan plays guitar. I'm sure he could handle bass.
Right. And so I'm like to Jeff, well, Jeff, you know him. Why don't you ask him? And Jordan Kettlewell made himself available to play bass we were talking 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think it was over the course of like a month and a half, but it was three Sundays that I had come in. I think because of my work schedule, there was 3 Sundays that I had come in to do bass guitar.
Right.
And in my mind, in my memory, it seemed like it all happened so fast. It was, hey, can you fill in on bass? Sure. And then the next thing you know, I was leading worship because Jordan Chambers had left, and everything was changing around. And this is like you're talking about God in those moments. I mean, not without getting into the nitty gritty. I'd served in kids ministry and led worship for years, but I was at a time in my life where I'd been away from the church for almost 3 years. And a lot of things had gone south, which happens, with a lot of people. And I thought I had no place even coming to church anymore. And then I got the call. And my call was not directly from God, but a guy named Jeff. But it was in that call from Jeff. I heard God immediately, and there was no hesitation. And I knew, okay, I have to do this. Yep, this is... He asked me to think about it and pray about it, and I said, I don't need to, I'll be there. And I had a perfect out because at the time I had just broken my middle finger in a sparring match, and playing guitar with a broken finger is not.
That's a little challenging.
It's not ideal for sure. So I had a perfect out, but even with that, I felt God pulling so hard that I said, "Yep, I'm in. I'm coming."
From sitting in the pews, and at that point, plus being a pastor, knowing the difficulty of finding staff, and it seemed like, man, there's an awful lot of in and out going on, but it was so fast. That's what I was struck by, and how God was moving. One person would leave. Then you would come, and then Jordan left, and you came, and it seemed to be almost seamless on some levels, at least from the Pew's perspective. And I was very impressed with who God was bringing to the church, and I just kept thinking, I wonder what God is building here. There were good people that left, but really good people that came.
Is that unusual to have so many staff changes in, I'll say, a relatively short time?
Well, my previous
that
congregation,
not really?
I went through that.
Happened, okay.
I had a big staff, and there was a period in a 2-year period I went through 7 staff.
Okay.
So for me it wasn't unusual, but probably for most places it is.
And again, the seamlessness of somebody moving on or retiring, as the case for Marianne and Kathy, those instances, somebody was right there to step in. God had already provided an on-ramp for the people who were coming in. And for Jordan, I talked to Jeff, and he and I were talking back, and Jordan Chambers had left, and I love worshiping. I love to lead worship because I've been doing that at the previous 2 churches I was at, but I needed to step back. And that was one of those moments where after the first few times of bass and then could you play guitar? Could you just lead? And you did, and it was just such a blessing to the church and so seamless.
It was very seamless.
And then I was able to eventually step back. It only seemed like a few weeks. And
Yeah, it took 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks for me to finally kick you out.
yeah.
Get you out of the way.
And we had I remember a conversation in the hallway with you in terms of, is this a fit? Is this something that you can do? Not physically, but are you ready spiritually to get back in that ministry saddle again? And
Yeah, you hit that one hard and fast right off the bat. I don't know if you remember when that conversation occurred. It was the first time I stepped in and played bass. The first day you and I had met.
okay, I'm thinking of a different conversation.
We did have other conversations later on, but I reflect on that one a lot because with where I was at spiritually and personally, like I knew that God was pulling me back, and I knew that I was supposed to say yes and do, but I still didn't feel like I belonged in a church, and definitely not in a any kind of a serving and leadership role, which at the time, bass guitar is, it's not really leading, but everyone in the band is leading. Everybody in a praise band is a worship leader. And I didn't feel, I felt like, okay, the band is in a pinch, I'll do that. But I didn't feel like it was right or appropriate. And it was like after service that day, we talked in the hallway for a while, and man, you hit me with some hard-hitting questions, and I was like, holy cow, this guy's intense. We're hitting the ground running. We're going hard right off the bat.
Maybe he'll be my father-in-law someday.
Yeah.
That'll be on the next podcast, maybe in 3 or 4 down the road.
But I remember that conversation, and I remember thinking like, well, I can't believe he's just asking me all this stuff right off the bat. And it seemed like maybe, like in the moment, it seemed like too much. But then at the same time, it all put me at peace because the way we talked about it, and I had explained to you where I was at and how I was feeling, and I remember Just in particular, one part in the conversation, I told you, I don't feel like I belong in a church, and I don't feel like I belong in a church serving in any kind of leadership role. And you just told me flat out, you're like, you're wrong. You said, you're wrong. If God's calling you back, you're wrong. You know, and
And we're glad you were wrong.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am, and I'm glad that you told me that. I'm glad that you're the kind of person that will just like right up front just speak truth and love, and that's what it felt like. It didn't feel like harsh truth; it felt like truth and love. And you know,
Let's make sure that that's clear to everyone.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. That's why I wanted to share it. Like that was a really, that was a life-changing moment for me. All right, I'm done.
Good place to end.
All right, I think we're going to end right there. So, thanks for sharing. Thanks for starting the conversation. And Jeremy and Jordan, thank you. Thank you to all our listeners out there. So, come back next week for another reflection on the last 5 years. We come to you from the Gaylord Methodist Church. If you need to find out anything about us, you can find us on the website. Just Google Gaylord Methodist Church, and you could call the office too at 989-732-5380. We also have 2 services on Sunday. We also have every other Wednesday an Encountering God service at 7:15 p.m. On Sunday, we have a 9 a.m. service, traditional, and a 10:45 contemporary, and we would just love to have you join us. If you can't, you can view us on Facebook or YouTube, and we look forward to seeing you or you hearing us next week. Bye-bye.